Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, a.k.a. PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast here on Blab. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. This is the podcast where we have digital dialogues from the worlds of social media, sports, and pop culture. We have an amazing panel. We're going to talk about branding and its relation to social media and sports. So I'm going to introduce the panel very quickly. We have the guy on the left from TSN. We have James Duthie. James, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I will warn you in advance that you'll probably get interrupted by barking dogs or screaming children or all sorts of variety of things here at my house.
It's all good. We have a dog upstairs too. He's a yapper, so it'll be both of us. So we'll cancel each other out, James. It'll be okay. We have Vice President of Business Operations for the Toronto Blue Jays. We have Stephen Brooks. Steve, welcome to the show.
Peter, thanks for having me. I stayed at work here, so there's no screaming kids, or there shouldn't be anymore. But thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, well, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's you're a really busy guy. You know, the season starts in a couple of weeks.
It's busy around here, absolutely. Lots going on, as you know.
Yeah, for sure. And we have, second time on Popternative. We have content services from Hockey Canada. We have Dave Brien. Dave, welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me. The only returnee on the panel, which I guess is my only here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So this is the time before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. I just give the panelists an opportunity to just give their opening remarks. James, you want to say a few things, introduce yourself, or maybe talk about this matter?
Opening remarks. This is like a Republican debate. I thank you for helping me out, as I'm really embarrassingly bad at technology. And if Peter had to go through the steps that he had to take me through on this, it'd be pretty embarrassing. So I didn't even know that Blab existed before this. So this is the first podcast, or whatever you want to call it, that I've ever done sitting in front of my computer. So there you go. It's a historical first for me, and I'm glad to do it.
Perfect. Steve, what about you? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do with the Blue Jays and Rogers Center? Or?
Sure. Well, it's also my first podcast, so you'll see me fumbling a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's an exciting time here around Rogers Center, coming off spring training. Lots going on down in Dunedin, as we've all seen, and team's obviously looking great. And we're excited to get going. Home opener next week. Games in Montreal this weekend, which will draw a huge crowd, which I'll be flying out tomorrow night to see those games. So I'm excited about that. Around the stadium here, you see what we're doing with the infield and work around the stadium. So we're also very excited about that. Lots still to be done, but Friday next week will be here soon enough.
Are you ready tonight on this Popternative to announce extensions for Bautista and/or Encarnacion?
Excellent journalism there. No, we'll stick to other topics. But a valiant effort nonetheless.
You got to try, bud.
You got to try.
Dave, I don't know how you're going to be able to follow that one there.
Geez, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about contracts or anything, but second time on the podcast here, second time on a podcast overall, and keeping me busy these days reaches both men here. I mean, obviously we got the Women's Worlds right now airing on TSN. We got some sledge hockey too with the IPC Pan Pacific Challenge. And also being from Montreal, I'm looking forward to a good game of baseball on Saturday.
You're going to join? You're coming?
I will be there. I'm on the third base line.
Very good. Well, the crowds are
Steve's
good.
I grew up an Expos fan in Ottawa, so I love the Jays now.
Yeah.
But if the Expos were to come back, they would jump first in my heart.
I could relate on that, but I won't tell you which team I'm rooting for.
All right. Well, go Jays.
Same colors as the Expos. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's going to be a fun weekend of baseball.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in Ottawa, we actually have a Can-Am team now. We have the Ottawa Champions. James, if you're aware of that, eh?
Her aware, but don't what? So what in the Can-Am League?
Yeah, it's Can-Am team. But what's interesting is they have an exhibition game against a Cuban team in a few weeks, and that's supposed to be a pretty good crowd drawer over there. It's like a pretty cool thing. They have a team from Cuba, the Havana team, coming to play a game. So I find that pretty cool. But yeah, baseball. And I remember, Steve, we actually had an episode of Popternative, right after the game, the Jose Bautista bat swing, and the first like half an hour of it was all about that.
Right.
And we're back in it. It's like the Jays get mentioned a lot on this show because when we talk about social media and brand, I think that run will live on social media forever as one of the most talked about runs. I mean, when you have Come Together trending worldwide for like 4 or 5 hours, that's something, right?
Yeah, I mean that was an incredible second half of the season, an incredible postseason run, and that particular inning of baseball was probably the most bizarre inning in baseball any of us have seen. And I didn't fully appreciate, I think, how exciting that inning was until over the holidays. I watched the rerun of that game from more of a fan's perspective as opposed to where I was at the time dealing with some of the issues in the crowd at the time and things of that nature. But to watch that as a fan was tremendous. It was exciting. The second, third time I watched it as it was being there live. So hopefully we can recreate some of that excitement this year.
Yeah.
I said at the time it should be one of those 30 for 30 docs someday. You could do an entire one just specifically on that inning. And as a guy, people always ask me who my favorite hockey team is. When you cover a sport, it kind of sucks the fan out of you of that sport. But I was able just to be a fan of baseball again last year, and that was spectacular.
Well, to have two bench clearing incidents, I think the bat flip, the hitting the bat, the call and what the right call was, the replay. It had a little bit of everything that inning. So,
yeah, the whole situation with Dyson too, getting in.
Right.
He got into someone's face. I think it was Encarnacion.
Yeah, he got into Edwin's with Edwin a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was an exciting inning of baseball, and the right guys ended up winning that game.
And I think it's good that we brought that up because this would be one of the first fish question. But and Dave, we'll start with you. But we're seeing social media as an effective tool in many ways in terms of elevating sports brands, and we're seeing it used not only with sports teams and like athletes, but we're also seeing it from the analysts or the reporters. We have a TSN host and anchor who has over 500,000 Twitter followers, and it's unbelievable. So what sticks out to you in terms of how brands are being elevated these days, specifically from the social digital aspect?
Well, I think social media just changed the whole game. I mean, nowadays, even like we see people follow games, they follow along on social media. I mean, it's a whole new ball game. No pun intended. But yeah, no, basically there you get, like you were saying, you get TV analysts or personalities who use those accounts to voice things that they probably wouldn't in other topics or basically on TV or anything, which makes it much more fun. You also get the behind the scenes action too, and some of the looks of stuff that you normally wouldn't see on air or news they bring along and everything. Yeah. And in terms of branding, I mean, it's just you get either you rep the brand of the company you work for, or you make yourself or your name or your own brand. So I mean, I think it's a whole new game with social media these days.
Yeah, and James, would you say that your like personal brand, with this guy here, the guy on the left, as someone who works for a TSN, a company that, reports and covers sports. I find it very interesting. You look at, that incredible milestone that Bob McKenzie reached with 1 million followers. It's the behind the scenes guys, or the guys reporting it, are being, are getting a lot of attention because of social media. That has changed, right, for journalists and media, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't think of that whatsoever when I first joined. I was a little bit late to Twitter, not really late, but, a year behind Bob and Dregs in the lot. And to me, it was just, and it became really, for the first few years, it was just a news feed. And I think that's where it changed the game completely. It replaced what the wire services and such that we had when I started out in this business. I would say I get 95% of my news now from Twitter. I never thought about personal branding at all, and still don't really. I suppose the first time I thought of it was that book, which you shamelessly plugged. Thank you. I guess it's not shamelessly when you do it. It's shamelessly when I do it. But
it's fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. But the publicity department for the publisher was very much into me doing more on social media, and that's where I got an Instagram for the first time like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was clueless on that. And I just got on Snapchat, and I've literally never Snapchatted, but all of it, they encouraged to do all this stuff. So I guess it all comes with it, and the followers that you mentioned, but I never purposely said, okay, this is going to build my brand. I just think, I guess it goes hand in hand. I go on there, I say stuff once in a while, and as you say, tweet stuff for the network to let people know when games are on. But it has been a formidable tool for the network and I suppose personally for all of us.
Because it makes sense, right? Like indirectly, it is, when you're tweeting or reporting and Instagramming a photo of you talking to Wayne Gretzky, you're indirectly building the James Duthie brand as well.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, I wish I'd taken more business courses in university, so I would have thought of this earlier and got it on the game. But I suppose it does. I like, as Dave mentioned, just it's fun to be able to do stuff that you wouldn't do on television. Like if I'm sitting home watching the Grammys and Lady Gaga's got a goofy outfit or something on, and I can do things that you would never get to do during a TSN hockey broadcast, and I get a kick out of that.
Yeah. And Steve, this is something I want to talk to you about, because Dave actually mentioned the whole behind the scenes. You've become pretty popular on social media when you started the Twitter account last season. And I think one thing that's really cool that you've done is you have given live updates, behind the scenes updates of putting the turf on the field.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just started off as a bit of an experiment more than anything. And it sort of evolved into providing information that fans started to think was useful. Yeah. So I started to use it almost as a guest or fan experience type of tool where I could real-time respond to people's questions. And I think people started to appreciate a bit of that transparency, and it sort of evolved from there. And, as the other guys mentioned, providing some behind-the-scenes look at the business of sports, and my intent was to provide a bit of a different slant, not so much the on-game player-related things, but the behind-the-scenes of how the sports business works, how the stadium runs, and people find things interesting. So, if people find things interesting, I keep doing it, and it builds, builds from there.
No, absolutely, and I think that having you on there and interacting, because you make an effort to answer as many questions as possible, and I think that's something that the fans really appreciate and they get a kick out of. Like, wow, S Brooks Baseball is replying to my comment. I think that's something. Is that something that you wanted from the get-go? You wanted a tool where you can kind of give updates to the fans and kind of interact with them?
Well, it also started as a way for me to get feedback from the fans directly. I mean, there was other ways that we had around here to do that, but I could get real-time feedback about things that fans liked, things that fans did not like, and it helped me from the business side of things try to make things better. So having that feedback has been very helpful for me. Hopefully, they appreciate the transparency. I try to be as transparent as I can. and provide as much insight as they can. So it's been rewarding, certainly for me, and enlightening for me to see what fans like, what they don't like. I appreciate their honesty.
Yep.
I appreciate, their sarcasm or their criticisms as well, because it just ways for us to try to be better. And again, I try to answer as many questions as I can. Ideally, I'd like to answer everybody's question. That's difficult to do, but certainly if I can hit the major themes that people are touching on, that's really my goal.
Yeah, and James, another thing too, another person who's really, really good at, and it's a former Popternative guest, is Craig Button from TSN, is fantastic at answering and having dialogues with fans on social media. Do you think that is something that should happen more? I mean, I like you said, it's like Steve said too, it's very hard to get to everyone. But do you think like interaction with people on a daily basis is something, that you could see more of on social media?
I was terrible at it for the first several years on Twitter, and I've tried to get better at it, certainly, but as Stephen was saying, it's tough sometimes. You just get the volume of stuff you get sometimes during a day, not always, but if there's something that's happening or if you're tweeting about a certain topic or whatever it may be, it's hard. And if you're working all day doing a game and I come home, I got 3 kids to take care of, am I going to be with them for 2 hours or am I going to try to make 100 replies? So, and I know some people get frustrated when you don't get back to them. And, it's sad. It's funny. When the people get angry at you that don't get back to you, those are the ones I end up usually replying to. Or the people that are nice, you forget to, which is the twisted world of social media. The angry people get more responses, I guess, somehow. But it's certainly something I try to do as much as I can. And like you say, guys like Craig are way better than me at it. And I think a guy like Bob, it's just too much when he's got 1.3 million followers or whatever he has to reply to every single person is a little bit, it's just not practical. But as much as we can, like you say, I think people do really appreciate it.
And I think someone else too, and Dave, this goes to you too, because Dave and I have done social media together at the World Juniors when they were in Montreal and Toronto 2 years ago. And like Mark Masters from TSN was terrific for that. Another Carleton grad. And he's someone, and it's something that you like to see. You see it from a lot of analysts, and you also see it from people that work for sports teams. We had Rob Mixer, who's the social media direct manager for the Columbus Blue Jackets in the NHL. He treats his personal account like an insider for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's always giving updates. So I find it's really interesting. Steve, are there any Blue Jays reporters or analysts that are really, really good at keeping the public aware of certain things and interacting?
I think they're all pretty good. They all take a different slant on it. I mean, not to single anybody out, I think does a great job. I think Mike Wilner does a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. He takes the criticisms, he takes tough questions, and he answers, openly and honestly.
That guy's got one of the toughest jobs in sports, doing that call-in show after the games. Because I listen sometimes, and man, he has to be patient.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But they all do a great job, and they all bring something a little different to it. I think I follow pretty much all of them as well, and I think their insights into the game are really interesting and enlightening. So it's tough for me to single anyone out, but I think Wilner, to James's point, has a tough job and does a really, really admirable job with it.
Do you do Snap? Does Dave or Steven, do you guys do Snapchat?
I don't know. No, it's.
I have it, but I rarely do it.
I do. I use Snapchat.
So so I have a 16-year-old boy, a 14-year-old girl, and a 12-year-old girl. And that is all they are on. I mean, I think they'll go on Instagram once in a while, Twitter almost never. And so I think that's, as far as a younger demographic, that's kind of where we got to go. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how the hell to use it.
Yeah. Well, Dave,
because that's all they're on.
We've had conversations about Snapchat, right? And a lot of players are using Snapchat and Instagram.
The thing with Snapchat is I think people like it because it automatically deletes itself, right? So you show someone an image and then next thing you know, it's gone.
Unless someone screenshots it and then it lives forever.
True
But
that.
where it's gone now in the storytelling, where there's social media, TV, whatever, it's all about storytelling. And Snapchat's done an amazing job. Like during the Jays run in the playoffs, for instance, when their story creators do fantastic things, taking all the snaps from different people, and it's kind of this nouveau age of telling a story like you'd see on a newscast, except it's just a minute of these fascinating sounds from different parts of the ballpark, everybody witnessing something. And I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job of that.
And I think it's growing too. There's a lot, they're adding a lot of things into it. And yeah, it's definitely, when Dave, you were talking about, the behind the scenes aspect of it, Snapchat's definitely one of those tools where you can have so much fun with that. And my question to you too, Dave, has to do with Snapchat, but has to do with other things. Do you think that social, like, because in Hockey Canada, you're covering a lot of events. There's the big events, there's the small events, there's TELUS Cup, there's Women's World, there's many events. Do you think, on a scale of like 1 to 10, how do you think having social media and blogs has helped those tournaments that didn't have as much leverage or traction, like right now? Like, do you think has it like exceedingly helped?
Definitely helped. I mean, at some point, because basically, I mean, it's not like professional leagues or anything where people can just open the paper and see the stats for the midget teams or anything. So having social media, if you're a typical, let's say, midget hockey fan for the TELUS Cup, then you can follow along throughout the year. You can see how teams make it there, how they go through the regionals and everything. And I mean, like, especially for the TELUS Cup, we have something we call Road to the TELUS Cup, which is basically the path of the 152 midget AAA teams across Canada, how they go down to 6 before the event. We do the same thing with the RBC Cup, which is Junior A. We have the SO Cup on the women's side. So, I mean, it's all giving access to those stats and leading up to the events and everything. So I think basically social media has definitely helped grow those tournaments because they're not that visible. But, I mean, that's all comes with internet and everything. I mean, the whole evolution side of everything, I mean, makes it much more accessible. I mean, even now, I mean, like we were saying, just for the behind the scenes, you could do like Facebook albums just to prepare, just to show people leading up to the event, what's being done and everything. So, I mean, like you were mentioning, for the smaller events and everything, I mean, World Juniors itself will get the coverage it needs and local media and everything. But for the smaller tournaments, I mean, it's definitely a big help.
Yeah. So, absolutely. And we can go around the panel for this one, but we can start with Dave too. But in terms of athletes and players, using social media, what do you see as, the benefits that they can get out of it? Yeah, this is for the whole panel. And like, do you think that there are some athletes that you've seen over the years that are good at it and are capitalizing on the ability to have interactions with fans, or are they just using it as a tool once in a while, just to post some stuff, but are kind of afraid, of like the possible repercussions because there's a lot of risk?
It's a little different story if you want with Hockey Canada, because I mean, mostly when we have our national teams, so under 17s or under 18s, I mean, we don't want them tweeting or using social media during the events.
Yep.
So if they're going to use it to help promote it, it's always obviously before the event kicks off or after when they say thank you or, or post pictures of them winning gold or whatever. But I mean, the biggest advantage of social media I've seen throughout my years with Hockey Canada is on the women's side. Because I know men's national teams, the world championships and everything, I mean, those guys got millions of followers on Twitter and everything. But on the women's side, I mean, they use it to grow the game, to grow that promotion, to give exposure to their tournaments. I mean, they're basically growing the sport through their social media accounts.
Yep.
So, I mean, if Marie-Philippe Poulin is tweeting, make sure to tune in on TSN tonight and catch our game against the U.S. I mean, I'm sure some people will grab that tweet, I mean, and take note of it and be like, oh, I got to tune in. The game's tonight, versus if it's the World Juniors or anything else, or the Olympics for that matter. I mean, on the men's side, I mean, they don't have issues at all getting some viewers, versus for the women's side, I mean, for them, it's definitely a good help and a good boost to grow the sport at the same time.
So it depends on the athlete is what you're saying too.
Yeah, I mean, there's no use of Claude Giroux saying tune in for the World Championship game or anything. I mean, people will probably all be on board, even if he does have those millions.
Well, unless he wants to.
Yeah, if he wants to. Then again, I mean, during events, it's pretty rare that people just tune in through social media and say follow this or that. But I mean, like I was saying, for the girls' side, it's definitely a huge.
Yeah, and Steve, I remember talking to Marco Estrada, and he's not on social media. He's a player of the Blue Jays that is not on social media, and you know he's like many athletes, he's unsure of it. This concept of tweeting something that can get taken out of context. What's your standpoint on that? Athletes' use of social media, and the Blue Jays specifically.
Well, I think we're fortunate to have a group of players who are, very active on social media. Stroman, Batista, Donaldson, Pilar, Sanchez, just to name a few. I think, they obviously the engagement with the fans is important. I think from a club's perspective, we're talking about branding. We've made significant efforts to attract the younger demographic over the years. Hand in hand with that, we're fortunate to have players who are very social media savvy. So it plays nicely with what we've been trying to do with the Blue Jays brand over the last number of years to make it younger, to make it fresher, and to do some, more unique things and different ways of engaging with that younger demographic that, frankly, we had lost for a number of years. So I'm all for it. It's, it has to be done responsibly. It certainly could be a double-edged sword. We've seen athletes get into a lot of trouble through social media. But we're fortunate to have a group of guys that are responsible about it and frankly do a fantastic job engaging with the fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say that, look at this, as Dave was saying, the superstars, Jonathan Taves, I know, just went on Twitter, I think like a month ago. And it doesn't matter to him. He's already loved everywhere and is a superstar. But I think there's a couple of examples where it's completely transformed guys. And I think the two most prominent would be, Paul Bissonnette, nobody knew him in the National Hockey League. He was a healthy scratch a lot of times with the Arizona Coyotes, just a fighter. But he was so funny, edgy, but funny as Biz Nasty 2.0. 3-4 years ago, he became one of the most popular hockey players and almost got a career out of being this guy on Twitter. And I think the number one example would be Roberto Luongo and his Strombone One account, Roberto kind of had this reputation as an aloof, sort of quiet, moody kind of goaltender. And through much of his career, he started the account not for the reason of changing that. For years, I was one of I think about his 50 followers because nobody knew it. He didn't want anybody to know about it. But slowly through teammates, it got out. And he was so funny and so self-deprecating there that I think that went a long way to transforming what people thought about Roberto Luongo, the player. And I think now he's probably one of the more popular guys in the league and due in large part to that. So in rare circumstances, if it's used properly, I think it completely can transform an image. And that's what happened, I think, in both those cases.
And Roberto Luongo has given, and I quote, advanced praise for the guy on the left, actually. On the
well, you got to scratch the back, right?
and he actually says, in the films we made, James and I struck the perfect combination of a TV legend and a regular TSN anchor. The book is amazing. The chapter about me, anyway. I haven't read the rest.
Yeah, he's an ego head, but I still had to give him some Twitter praise.
I think it's good. But someone else that Dave and I know really well that's really good, James, on social media for hockey, he's playing in the AHL, but Zach Boychuk.
I know Zach really well, and he's as hilarious in real life as he is on Twitter. So
he's been on the show.
Oh, awesome.
And we had him on with JJ Lade, who was a contestant of The Bachelorette, because Zach Boychuk loves The Bachelorette and The Bachelor. And his tweets about it are hilarious.
So I spend Zach's always at Jordan Everly's golf tournament, which I host every year. So I get to spend about 48 hours with Zach every summer. And, that would be a whole other podcast, the content during those 2 days.
Now you've both been guests on Popternative. You could talk about that.
Hockey players in the summer are a lot looser than they are in the season. But he's a terrific guy, and you're right, he uses it very well.
If I can jump in here, PD, I have a question. I mean, we were talking earlier. I mean, I use social media to find stories. I'm sure James does the same. But I want to ask Steven, I mean, are you the type of person who follows your players and, would be the type of guy to land them in trouble if you saw something or a tweet they did that you weren't agreeing with?
No, I don't think so. I follow a few of the players. I think as we've gotten more comfortable with social media, I'm not as concerned about those type of things. Like I said, I think our players do a great job, have been responsible. They're educated in spring training about social media. They're coached from our communications people. So, I mean, I think they take it very seriously. It's their own personal brand as well. But we've been fortunate enough not to have any issues, touch wood, that continues.
No, it's Steve. You also are. Another thing too is you do work as well for not just the Jays but the Rogers Center.
That's right.
And there's a lot of concerts that happen at the Rogers Center as well, right?
There definitely is, yeah.
A lot, yeah. So having like One Direction and those and Beyonce played there, right?
Beyonce played there and is playing again. Yeah,
she is playing again. So that like you probably put on a totally different hat for that, even like when you're just like following those events on social media, because that's part of the process as well, right?
Yeah, I mean those are a little different because we're the venue host as opposed to the the event itself. So in terms of social media, that's very much the act itself. We are just the venue. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting acts that come through, and there will be again, coming up and in the future. But again, it's a little bit different being from the team side of things to hosting an event here.
As a follow-up, could you get us backstage for Beyonce?
Sure, I can certainly arrange that. If I get a signed book,
I definitely do. That is not a fair trade on your behalf. If I got you a signed Beyonce book, maybe.
There you go. Very good. Very good.
James, you mentioned you host a Jordan Edwards golf tournament. Is that something that you like doing as well? Doing those type of events and kind of you also spoke at Carleton University a couple of years ago as well. Doing those events, kind of being on site and giving sharing kind of like the behind the scenes stories. That must be a really cool part of the job as well, right?
Well, it is simply because I'm locked in a studio. I live a hermit life, which I don't think people get. I'm busy with the kids at home, so I'm kind of home, right into the studio, do a show home if I'm not on the road doing something. So I don't get to talk to people all that much, and besides maybe social media, get the feedback. So yeah, it's actually nice to talk to live human beings once in a while, besides looking into a camera and just talking to Bob and Dregs as much as I love them every night. So no, I do really enjoy doing things like that as much as I can. It's just hard to get out with the schedules we have.
Perfect. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up this episode of Popternative. Before we go, James, do you want to? I was the one. I've been talking about it a lot. Why don't you say something about this?
Honestly, I did a book tour in the fall, and I'm so sick of talking about myself and the book that it's okay. I'm done. I promised Canada there would be no more plugs. So,
but it's the follow up of your first book.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of just stories from a career in broadcasting and stuff that if you read, you'll probably make fun of me on Twitter for the next 10 years. So there you go.
Absolutely. Steve, any closing remarks? Anything you wanna say?
No, just that we're looking forward to the season. There's going to be big crowds this year around the stadium. We're very excited. Team looks great, and I hope that the energy that the fans showed all last year, for that matter, but especially the last couple of months, can continue. It's going to be an exciting year, and let's go Blue Jays.
Perfect. Dave, any closing remarks?
Just as I mentioned in the opener, make sure you follow every Hockey Canada social accounts and stay up to date with all our tournaments. Obviously,
watch all the games on TSN.
Exactly. Our partners are happy out there. But obviously World Juniors coming back to Montreal and Toronto next year is going to be huge. We don't know the next time it'll be around. So get your tickets, tune in, follow everything, and enjoy the game.
Perfect. James, you spoke about your book, but anything else you want to close with?
No. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's great listening to these guys as well. I'm looking forward to the James, Stephen, and
Good.
I'll be watching all the Hockey Canada events because I'm contractually obligated to, Dave. But I will anyway.
Very
Our
good.
number one fan.
Well, this has been Popternative. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, James. You can catch previous episodes of Popternative on our YouTube and our SoundCloud page. We are taking a break next week. We have no show, but we'll be back in 2 weeks, April 13th, with Hamilton Tiger Cats quarterback Zach Calaros. So that will be a very good episode. So this has been Petey Beats signing off for Pop.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.